Hello, welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video, I'm going to be looking at one of the Stronghold pre-constructed decks, which is Migraine, which is it's the first monocolor pre-constructed deck. Before I look into it, I've got a story I want to share about this. So I actually owned this deck, and because I started out playing in sort of Tempest Stronghold, and I remember I wanted this deck, and my friend at the time really wanted this deck, and I remember being on holiday and seeing two copies of this deck on the shelves, and I only got one for myself, and I lied to him and said that they only had one, and I got it for myself. I didn't want him to have it, so there we go. That's my confession. Feels good to get that off my shoulders. The sort of weight has been lifted. But let's look at Migraine and why I didn't want my friend to have it. So, it is a pure black deck. We have 15 creatures, 4 instants, 3 artifacts, 9 sorceries, 5 enchantments, 24 swamps. Mana curve off to the side there. So what's actually the theme of this deck? Well, if you've seen the enchantments and some of the spells, you already know, but let's take a closer look. So we have a series of creatures. These are all small and efficient black weenies, which are actually all pretty good, I think. Well, for the time, at least. You know what? I'm going to say Doughty Horror, a 2/1 shadow that can't be blocked by white creatures, is still quite good. Doughty Slayer as a 2/2 with shadow that has to attack every turn available. I also think that's still quite good. Those two are really nice and aggressive. Shadow makes them very difficult to block. I mean, it limits how they block as well, but you know, they're more aggressive. Doughty Horror not being able to be blocked by white creatures makes it almost completely unblockable. Especially in set because it's got shadow, so it can only be blocked by creatures with shadow. Which means there are a lot of white creatures with shadow, so really it could only be blocked by a very small number of black creatures and blue creatures. But I remember using these cards in decks like for a really long time after Stronghold and Tempest had sort of rotated out, because they're just very good, aggressive, efficient creatures. Pit Imp, this is basically like a reskin of the classic vampire bats. 0/1 flyer, and you can pump it up to be a 2/1. I mean, a decent outlet for leftover black mana, I suppose, and it's like a decent chump block. And then Foul Imp, 2/2 flyer for 2, which is no carry, but when it comes in, you lose 2 life. Again, I think perfectly fine for the time. Obviously not great these days. Actually, I mean, it's a 2/2 for flyer for 2 in black with a sort of a slight downside that's okay, but really nice, as she just said, that we get full playsets of Doughty Horror and the Foul Imp. That's always really nice when you get a full playset of something in a pre-constructed deck. A few more creatures. So we have Rabid Rats, which is 1/1, tap, target blocking creature gets -1/-1 till 10. Kind of an interesting effect to see in black, actually. I'm not sure. I can't think of another card that sort of is similar to that. Because black obviously normally does. Doing -X effects isn't rare for black, but it's kind of weird to put it on with a timing restriction, in this case like a blocking creature and stuff, but it's it's a free ability. That's actually kind of good, I suppose. It's effectively like a little combat trick. Doughty Mindripper, another Doughty with shadow. This is a guy, if he gets through, you sacrifice him and your defending player discards 3 cards, which is quite brutal, and sort of the beginning of the theme of this deck, which is further carried further with Mind Warper, which is 4 mana for a 0/0. It comes in with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. You can pay 2 colors on a black, remove a counter from it, and target player discards a card, but activate this ability only as a sorcery. So, as you've probably now gathered, this deck is all about discard. which we're going to see here. So this is a lot of cards relating to discard. Now, discard is it's not fun to play against. Obviously, it's you know it doesn't feel great to have to discard your cards before you get to play them, which is why in recent sets these days we don't really see a lot of discard anymore. Like there might be one spell like common or uncommon that does maybe like discard two and something else, like it has like one of the block mechanics attached to it, but we don't really see that much discard now because people don't really like it. Same with like land destruction, like people don't really like land destruction either, and that's why we barely ever see land destruction anymore. Because I mean it's just not fun, is it? Discard. It just really sucks. I mean there are card games where discard is fine. Those are usually games where you might, if you run out of your deck, you might shuffle your discard pile through or something. You cycle cards through. But in Magic, where your resources are kind of limited, you might only have, say with these pre-construct decks as well, or card availability at the time, you might only have a few copies of a really good card, and if you have to discard it, it's just not great. It's I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but also with discard is kind of like it's a kind of, I'd say it's pseudo land destruction as well, because there might be times where you have to discard cards and you might have to make a tough choice between like a spell or a land, and it's basically denying resources. It's basically stopping someone from playing the game, which it's just not very fun. I've heard there's always been like casual groups of people request like, oh, no discard, no land destruction and stuff, and like that's not so much a thing anymore because I say there's not really the support for discard anymore. Anyway, enough of my rant about discard. So we have coercion, which is like a targeted discard. Mind peel, which is discard with buyback. That's fun. Bottomless pit, which is every player's upkeep, they discard a card at random. I'm surprised this wasn't rare, actually. This is uncommon, and there's two of them, so that's pretty mean. And then, the enchantment that ties all this discard together, which is Migraine. Whenever an opponent discards a card, they take 2 damage. It's weird, actually, that this is because at this time in the game's history, a lot of enchantments are symmetrical. Like in previous episodes, we've looked at cards like Alluran or Furnace of Wrath, which have a symmetrical effect. They affect the whole board, like your opponent gets the benefit as well. So it's really weird that Migraine isn't symmetrical. Like it's not like whenever a player discards a card, they take 2 damage. This is kind of like almost like ahead of its time in terms of design. This Migraine eventually got superseded by what's it called, Liliana's Caress, in one of the modern Magic core sets. I think they just dropped a mana from it. I think it was life loss as well rather than damage. But yeah, Migraine is the original, and kind of like really like the glue of this deck that gives it kind of a purpose. We also have a load of removal, so just in case your opponent managed to get past all the discard and actually gets creatures on the table, you can just kill them. So Dark Banishing, Diabolic Edict, 4 Deathstrokes, again, like full playset, which is really nice to see. And just randomly, just a Dark Ritual. So potentially that's Dark Ritual, actually, if there'd been more of them, that would have been really mean, because that's a potential, it's turn 1 Migraine, turn 1 like Coercion, just powers out those discard spells, or turn 1 Bottomless Pit, geez, that would be mean. Just powers out those discards like a lot earlier. Also really hilarious, back in the early days, Dark Ritual has a card type of mana source, not an instant or anything like that. It is a mana source, so that's good to know. And then a few artifacts. So these are all like, I think, pretty good. Hornet Cannon is a bit rubbish. I have a bit of a soft spot for Hornet Cannon. I fully appreciate that Hornet Cannon is not very good, but I have a soft spot for it. I just like the idea of firing like robot wasps at people. I think that's really funny. But yeah, it just creates 1/1 flyers that immediately die. I just think that's like just a fun card. But then we have two much better artifacts. So we have Portcullis and we have Ensnaring Bridge. So Portcullis is basically means that there can only be um, two creatures out after you play it. Maximum of well, actually, So let me start again. So when you play Portcullis, from that point on, if playing a creature would mean that there are more than two creatures out, the other creature gets exiled until Portcullis leaves. So I guess the intent here is you make your opponent discard or you kill their creatures, you drop two of your aggressive creatures, so like Doughty Horror or Doughty Slayer, then you drop the Portcullis, and then they can't get anything else out, or if they do get it out, it gets exiled until they get rid of the Portcullis. So there is a potential they kind of could stockpile up an army and then shatter or disenchant this, and then they get an army sweeping and stuff. But they've still got to do that. They've still got to play around it. Portcullis is really cool, and I'm not sure if it's ever been reprinted, but I think that's quite fun. And then we have Ensnaring Bridge, and Ensnaring Bridge it's like a really valuable card because it's not been reprinted a lot again, and it's got just a really good effect. Creatures with power greater than the number of cards in your hand can't attack, and that's just quite a strong effect. So it actually makes this if you wanted to replicate this deck, it would be quite expensive to get these cards, etc. Because their secondary value is quite high. But yeah, really quite strong control options in this deck with all the discard and anything that comes down is either killed or it's exiled by Portcullis or it can't attack because of Ensnaring Bridge. Really, really mean deck to use. So it could have been. Yeah, I've only suggested two cards because again I think this deck's really strong. I think these Stronghold decks are definitely kind of a step up from the Tempest ones, or at least the two we've looked at so far, the Call of the Core and this one. So Brush with Death is just opponent loses 2 life, you gain 2 life. I mean, this isn't even ideal. I'm conflicted whether or not this would be a better inclusion or not, because it's fine. When I was younger, I thought this card was great because oh man, you hit 7 mana and you can drain them for 2 every turn. I mean, that's not very strong. Reanimate though, that's what we're talking about, because you make someone discard a good creature, you reanimate it. Reanimate is 1 mana, get a creature from any graveyard, put into play, under control, and you just lose life equal to the mana value, which is if you're getting something really good and you only have to pay 4 or 5 life, it's worth it. Reanimate is really, really strong, really good. Again, I don't think this was rare. I think this was maybe uncommon, which seems insane to me. But yeah, really mean mean deck, just full of discard. I am glad we don't really see it anymore because eventually I think I had a few games where I did lend this to my friend so he could play it, even though I didn't pick it up for him, and yet it wasn't fun to play against, just because it's not fun to lose all your cards. But yeah, what did you think? Did you ever have this deck? Did you use it? Did you play against it? Did you have a horrible time? I don't know. What are your thoughts on discard cards in Magic the Gathering in the overall? Yeah, I'd like to hear. So put a comment below. But I'll be back next time. I'll be looking at another Stronghold deck. So thanks for listening. Have a good day.